Hey, Nerd Herd, Dynasty Nerds here, back again this week, entering week 9, and we got a lot to talk about. Where does Michael Pittman Jr. stand amongst all Dynasty fantasy football wide receivers?
What are we doing with Calvin Ridley?
And it's always rookie season. We're talking 2022 rookie class and how they rank compared to the previous classes.
So much in this jam-packed episode. Let's get into it.
Ready, set, hut, hut. Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Rich Dotson, here with my fellow nerds, Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
And Garrett Price.
How's it going?
It's going. We got a lot to talk about here as we enter week 9 of the fantasy football season, Dynasty season. Dynasty summer is over. It was a hot Dynasty summer. We're into Dynasty fall. Things are cooling down here. Teams are cooling down here. We got a lot to discuss. Big news, bad news, all kinds of things when it comes to players out for the year, out for life.
Yep.
And injuries and what's to do with it in our Dynasty leagues. Where are we at? There's still a lot of weeks to go, essentially, even in the fantasy season with this extra week here. But it's starting to get down to the nitty gritty here for the playoff run. So before we get into all that, how about a word from our friends at Thrive Fantasy? You can come up and prop up on Thrive Fantasy this football season. Thrive Fantasy is a daily fantasy sports and esports app for player props. Now, with Thrive, you can eliminate the countless hours of research and focus on only the top-tier athletes that have the biggest impact on the game. You get to choose 10 out of the 20 players they have props. So they are just, situations like, hey, will Baker Mayfield, will his receivers drop 8 footballs or they drop the over-under on that? Like, I'm taking the over. These guys have butterfingers. You know what I mean? It's like, let them go hang out with Bart Simpson. Or, will Derrick Henry break 1 toe or 5 toes? Who knows? Like, I'm going to take the under because he's not even playing. So he's not going to break any toes. Those are kind of prop bets you get on there. Well, not really. They're really like, hey, will Baker throw an interception or not? Those kind of prop bets, but you get my drift. Each prop is assigned a fantasy value from both the over and the under based on how likely it is to hit. So if you go against the grain, you're going to get a little bit more points, put you in a better position to win that $5,000. And you hit the most props, rack up the most points, win a share of the prize pool. And right now, with the promo code NERDS, you get 100% instant first deposit match, which means you put $100 in, all of a sudden your account, $200 to gamble. That's free money, peeps. Free money. So all you got to do is download the Thrive Fantasy app on the App Store or Play Store or visit thrivefantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code NERDS to get that free money. Now, into the week. Now, I want to start us off with the
injuries.
The biggest news here is Derrick Henry. Actually, you know what?
I would say there's a lot of big news this week.
It's been a weird week. I'm going to start off a different way here. Henry Ruggs, obviously, a lot of details are unknown. Got into a very serious car accident just yesterday, Monday or Tuesday early morning. Rear-ended a young lady with his car. He had his girlfriend as a passenger, and a young woman passed away due to this accident. She was 23 years old. Henry Ruggs' career is clearly in doubt now at this point.
For sure.
They say minimum 2 years if it's a DUI, homicide, minimum 2 years on that.
Maximum, I think, was like 20.
Yeah, so odds of Henry Ruggs playing again, some of the stuff is crazy. I've seen people bring up, things like Dante Stallworth, but that person was jaywalking. This is a different situation. He literally rear-ended somebody at 3:30 in the morning. She died. It was a young lady, 23 years old, and it really just makes me sick to my stomach. Not just a guy like Henry Ruggs, who's a multi-millionaire, who literally has a button on his phone. It's just a button on your phone that you have to hit if you had anything to drink, anything to smoke, anything, whatever, to maybe you were just up for 24 hours and you can't think straight because you've just been up so long. You have a button on your phone you could tap, and somebody will come pick you up and drive you home. Not all of us have millions of dollars on the line, but we all, millions of dollars for him, thousands of dollars for us, hundreds of dollars for some of us. It goes, it means a lot. So if you get a DUI, you lose all of that. And even more importantly, you have the potential to lose your freedom, which goes beyond money. And even more important in this situation, somebody can lose their life over that stupid ass decision. So, please, first of all, besides fantasy football, if for any reason you feel like you're impaired to drive, and it doesn't have to be drugs, it doesn't have to be, marijuana. It could just be you're just too tired to drive, right? Like you just don't feel good. Hit the damn button on your phone. That shit, it just drives me crazy, man. nowadays we have so much access to these kind of things, and people still. It even drives me crazier that people are in a position where, like, you have a $60 Uber bill. It means nothing to you. You know, and I get some people that make up against it, like, hey, this is a $50 Uber bill. I can't even pay my rent this month. You know, like that's I get it, but still, man, there's way more to lose than $50 or being a week late on your payment. So starting there for the first and foremost is when I see this stuff like this, it drives me crazy. But if you own Henry Ruggs, it's just, you know, I mean, it's likely over.
Yeah, I mean, you've missed your sell window. There was a little bit of time there during the day when there was a lot of uncertainty. Now everyone knows the unfortunate severity of the incident. So I mean, there's nothing you can do with your dynasty shares of him.
I mean, if you wanted to cut him, you can cut him. If you have a taxi squad, he's still available on there. You can put him on there. If you have room, I would hold him because again, these millionaires sometimes find crazy ways to get out of these situations. You know, for me, I'm locking this dude up for a long time. You know, if it turns out that he was impaired, again, I don't know all the details, so I'm not going to come hard on Henry Ruggs right this second because I don't know the details what happened.
Right.
Those are still going to come out. But yeah, you missed that window. I know Izzy Elkafas in our Ultimate Dynasty Podcast League, as soon as he heard about the accident, before any news broke, he put him out there as like, hey, I saw Henry Ruggs was in an accident. I saw the picture of the accident. Anybody want him for a 23-second to have him? And Tyler Gunther bought him. And then literally an hour later, the news broke.
Sucker.
Yeah, I mean, so that didn't work out too well for him.
Sorry, Tyler.
So, I mean, Tyler's always on the bad end of some trades sometimes.
He really is.
It's just really the what he does well is just make bad trades. So, yeah, I mean, you're stuck with Henry Ruggs. Would any of you cut him right now? I know I would not cut him.
No, I don't think I'd cut him. I mean, it's obviously, it would be a moral thing if I was to cut him. I think it would be a bad business decision to just cut him loose right now with so much. I mean, I know we are getting details, but there's still so much uncertainty how it's going to play out down the line.
Yeah, if you're not up against it, you know, I know some people play smaller rosters for their dynasty leagues. If that's the case, you know, it's only 25 total spots or, you know, 22 total spots or something like that, and you need the space. I'm fine with it, but I'm not necessarily cutting him just to cut him unless I absolutely need the spot.
Yeah, if I had to cut him, I'm okay with it. Because again, odds are he's not playing probably ever again.
Probably not. And even if it's best case scenario, you know, assuming that it was a DUI, you know, he does get convicted, even 2 years, we're talking 2 years from when all of this plays out. By the time the court case goes through and all of that, like, so we're talking probably 3 to 4 years of actual NFL time. That's a lot of time to miss and be able to come back and still be effective.
And there was the fact that he was also in the car accident. I mean, he was in the car accident.
He was injured as well.
He was listed as serious as far as injuries.
I heard he broke his hip.
And there you go.
That's the rumor. Yeah, I didn't heard that for sure.
I heard it from Tyler Gunther, and he's one DT.
Oh, really?
He's the one that wrote it.
He was digging deep after that trade,
Yeah.
trying to find some
like,
sort
please.
of like.
He was calling the hospital like, "Hey, I'm Henry Ruggs' stepson. Is his hip okay?"
Tyler Ruggs.
So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. There, you know.
Yeah, it's a very sad situation.
Make stupid choices, get stupid penalties, and live with the consequences. On another note, which is, you know, sad for a lot of people out here, they're contenders. The number one fantasy football running back, Derrick Henry, is now likely done with the for the season. That dreaded Jones fracture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's the fifth metatarsal, right?
Yep.
Same type of thing. They didn't actually call it a Jones fracture, but that is basically the same injury, right?
It's a Jones fracture, yeah.
Yeah.
Some people did call it that.
Yeah, usually requires surgery and a screw and all that kind of good stuff. And was it 8 to 10 weeks? Which essentially, I mean, especially for the fantasy season, no matter what, I mean, that's the season. So.
The average missed time, I believe, was 9.5 weeks. Yeah. It was like the average, what it averaged out to.
I feel like the people that have rushed it back, though, also have had issues coming back. So.
Yeah, and we were talking with, I believe it's pronounced Devin Leland is his last name, but he does some writing for us, and we're talking with him a little bit. And I asked him, I was like, is there any concerns long-term?
Doctor?
Yeah, he is a doctor.
Yeah,
he is a doctor. He is a medical doctor.
He is.
He's a learned doctor. But yes, so he said that it's not foolproof, and especially the guy of Derrick Henry's size, there is about 10% re-injury, and there's a lot of risk with that too. So it's not a great situation, and he's not the youngest player either. So it's one that does have me concerned. I don't think we're going to see him again this year. I would be shocked if we saw him even in a playoff run, which I don't know that they'll be able to have without him. But even there, I would be surprised. I think they're going to want to try to do the best they can to secure their best asset on that team, and I think they're probably shutting him down for the season.
I believe so too. And I want to apologize before you go on to everybody, because this is all my fault.
I got a lot of people telling me that. Yeah.
Did they?
That it was your fault.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They're like,
You
the
finally came
moment
out,
Rich says,
declared him.
yeah, that he's on board with Derrick Henry, boom, there it goes.
People told you that?
Literally, I had like 3 people DM me and be like, you realize this is Rich's fault, right?
Well, they're right. It is my fault. I finally, after years, come around. I moved Derrick Henry up my dynasty ranks to my number 2 overall dynasty running back. In the beginning of the year, I'm like, dude, this dude's just been super healthy too. Like, we talked about it. Like, there's no
Unreal.
way for how many carries he gets that he could stay healthy again this year. Like, the odds are just against it. So we put that bad mojo on him. I moved him on my rankings literally a week, not even a week later. He's hurt and out for, it's not even a minor injury. He's out for the year. So far, all you Derrick Henry owners, which of course I'm clearly not a Derrick Henry owner, I think I've got him in one last nerd standing league, I think. But even then, I took over a team for somebody who got sick, and
So
I
you
couldn't
didn't draft
team.
him.
I even drafted him. I take full responsibility. Matt, go on with real facts. Not
Oh, no. Obviously,
Bad
Derrick Henry is a very unique running back, irreplaceable type of guy. They're not going to be able to replace him with just one person. So it's looking like Adrian Peterson, Jeremy McNichols. They went out and signed Dante Foreman again, who is a similar style type, big physical back.
2 years moved from the ACL or 3 years removed?
3 years, and that was an Achilles.
That's what I meant to say. Yeah.
On
Both being on the
Foreman.
ace.
Yeah, so we'll see what it actually looks like on the field. But how do you guys see this like affecting the rest of the team's fantasy assets? Because clearly you're not going to get as much production out of the running back position, even if you got one of those guys, Adrian Peterson. You're not going to get the same kind of production. But what do you guys see? How do you guys see Tannehill, for example, or the other wide receivers?
The tricky part is I think the gut reaction at first is, well, they're going to have to throw the ball more, so that's going to be good news for the receivers, blah, blah, blah. I think it's kind of a net loss still, though, because one of the best things that Ryan Tannehill has done is in the play action game.
Yep.
And without a running back that's a true threat, that play action isn't nearly as effective. So I think for Tannehill, I would say it's either same or maybe slight dip down. For A.J. Brown, Julio Jones hurt again. That's kind of been his MO for the past 3 or 4 seasons. So A.J. Brown will still probably get his, and he's always liable to make a big play or 2 per game. He's going to get a lot of targets. So that's the only one that maybe has a slight tick up. But even there, I would say it's probably even.
I would say I would look at your waiver wires for Jeff Swaim, see if he's on your waiver wire. I know I looked in a couple of my leagues. He was, and these are 30-man roster leagues. Jeff Swaim was on the waiver wire.
Okay.
I picked him up in the leagues to score a touchdown this past week. Another big body out there with Julio being out, an option there. Haven't heard anything. Is Josh Reynolds hurt?
No, he's just not good.
Oh, okay. Just wondering. I knew it was one of the two. Either hurt, invisible, or just not good.
He's just not good.
Option C, as always. Yeah. I think Jeff Swaim's there. I mean, Adrian Peterson, he averaged in Detroit last year, he averaged almost 4 yards per carry.
3.9.
Yeah, so he averaged almost 4 yards per carry last year.
3.9.
On a team that's going to pound the ball pretty significantly, he's going to do what they do. I know they're bringing Deontay Foreman. He's nobody. Jeremy McNichols, a pass catching back, but pretty stout.
I think he has the most upside.
Definitely the most upside, but I think Adrian Peterson is. We're going to talk about him in the buy sell episode next show. Is he a buy? Is he a sell? Tune in and find out for the Nerd Herd episode. But we're going to talk about him as well. So I think I won't go into the details. We're talking about next episode. So I don't want to get into Adrian Peterson now.
Sure,
we're going to talk about him in the next show.
For me though, you have a guy in McNichols that is already there, already a part of the offense. Yeah. You're right. He has the pass catching ability. So I think if there's anybody that takes over the job, it would be him. But I think the most likely scenarios, all of them are involved, and it just makes it very ugh.
Is this a buy window in Dynasty for Derrick Henry? Do you go out, a little older? We were saying sell now, but do you think for a team, because obviously if you have Derrick Henry, you're a championship caliber team. Most likely a top 3 team at this point. You have the number 1 fantasy football running back. You don't carry running backs like him if you're rebuilding.
Right.
So, is this a move if you're a mid-range team? Say you're just banged up for injuries, so you can use a little bit running back help. You kind of want to do addition by subtraction. You have like 1 running back left. Maybe like Austin Eckler is your only running back right now, and you're battling up with like Nyheim Hines, because say you had J.K. Dobbins and Cam Akers. Do you offer like a lateral switch? If you had Austin Eckler, would you give up Austin Eckler right now? If you're in that scenario only, or another running back, whoever it may be, for Derrick Henry, do you make that move with the anticipation you can compete next year with Derrick Henry? Or do you just say,
if you're one of these teams that's completely decimated with injuries, and now all of a sudden, you've got Austin Eckler left on your team and you're just looking to kind of tank the rest of the season, I would make that move. It's not like, what kind of shelf life does Austin Eckler have? You know what I mean? Like another 2 years?
2 years probably.
You could probably still get 2 years out of Derrick Henry, don't you think?
I agree, yeah.
So I think probably at higher production as well.
And I think that's the type of running back I would be willing to trade. One that's maybe technically in their prime, but they're reaching the end of their career, as opposed to one of these younger running backs with upside. I wouldn't be as keen on trading one of those types of players for a Derrick Henry. But yes, a guy that's 26, 27 years old, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, and I'd make sure, too, before you make that move, check your team. Get yourself a reality check. Because, there's not a lot of players that average over 25 points per game. There's not a lot of those. Those are literally, truly difference makers that push you to the top of your league. Mm-hmm. So whenever move you do make, whenever you make your move, you got to imagine you're going to take a step back about almost 10 points per game. So make sure you look at your team before you make a drastic move like that. Like, I just got to replace Derrick Henry with Nick Chubb, like something along those lines. Then you realize, oh, my gosh, I was just getting my team's okay.
Now I'm getting 15 points a game instead of 25.
28 points. He was averaging 28 points per game. I remember we talked about it. He was on the Christian McCaffrey level where, like, what made Christian McCaffrey so unique was nobody averages 30 points per game. Derrick Henry was close.
You know what I just realized, too? We were talking about Tyler Gunther earlier. I made several trades with him this offseason, and I decided, I'd go all in. And so 2 of the players that I got from him were Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey. So I'm pretty sure that's his fault that all of those guys are now hurt.
It is his fault.
Thanks a lot, Tyler.
Jeez, Tyler.
Don't probably like bumped elbows with Baker Mayfield too. Thanks a lot, Tyler.
He did make a trip up here to Cleveland.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
I have Baker on that team as well. So
maybe it's my fault. Yeah. Maybe it is your fault.
Maybe it's my fault.
Let's see Foot Price over here. It's killing our guys. For the record, in Superflex, I'm somewhat nervous about Ryan Tannehill. Just to lay that out there as well. For the same reason that you were talking about, his game is predicated so much on the play action, and to not have that kind of threat in the backfield, just not sure what kind of looks he's going to be getting. So before we moved on, I did want to put in my 2 cents there.
And the weapons are slim. I mean, you go from having Julio, AJ Brown, Derrick Henry, Anthony Ferguson. It's like now you're sitting here like
you got AJ Brown.
Hey AJ.
I mean, I'm glad to have him. I have AJ Brown on several of my teams. Yeah,
peppered. But I mean, just from an NFL standpoint, the AFC is wide open. These number 1 seeds are flip flopping left and right. Now it's the Titans, and also they lose Derrick Henry. There we go.
Yeah, everybody was talking. Yeah, everybody was talking about the Chiefs and the Browns as like the real contenders, and they both they're both 500.
Yeah, and
roadkill right now.
And everybody's sitting there talking like Baker, like, oh, Baker this, like, dude, why isn't anybody talking about the $50 million a year man, Pat Mahomes? Like, people are talking about like, oh, Baker's this, but Pat Mahomes has been playing terrible.
He has not played well this year.
Is he a sell rich?
No, definitely
no. He's a buy. This is a window.
I'm just kidding.
Open up that window and sneak your way in there and get some of that nookie. Mm-hmm. James Robinson, heel bruise, day to day.
Does anyone know the severity? Has that come out yet at all? Is this one of these things that's just kind of in-game injury that's going to kind of blow right over?
I think that's the case. Urban was talking about it a little bit, and I guess they had avoided a more significant injury that they were worried about. So the fact that they have him listed as day-to-day makes me feel like he has a very good shot to play this week. Even if he doesn't, missing 1 game is not the end of the world. He could still fit, especially with all these injuries, still finish as an RB1 overall in the season.
Because I just traded for my first share of James Robinson.
So it's your fault.
It's my fault that he's injured.
I would like, if I had James Robinson, I would love to sell him to the Derrick Henry owner and get like a 23 first and like a 22 second out of it. I would love to do that.
Wait, you're selling him to the Derrick Henry. Oh,
Whoever
got it.
just
You're not
lost.
selling for Derrick Henry.
Whoever just lost.
You're selling
Derrick
for the
Henry.
picks. Got it.
If I can get 23 first and a 22 second for Derrick Henry, James Robinson, I feel pretty good about that.
I'm a big James Robinson truther, but if I could get a 23 first and a second, I would do that as well.
James Robinson looks good.
He's been fantastic.
It looks like there's no reason that he shouldn't be the main running back there, but I'm still always going to go back to they spent a first round pick on Travis Etienne. Like, you don't spend a first round pick on a running back and not use him. It's as simple as that.
Unless you're Pete Carroll.
It does not, unless you're Pete Carroll.
Oh, man. Wow.
That's true. I forgot about Rashad
Chris
Penny.
Carson, baby.
Well, I mean, Bill Belichick did the same thing. Sonny Michel, who needs him?
Who needs that guy either? So
Never mind. First round picks don't matter.
another guy out for the year, Jameis Winston tore his ACL. Done for the year. Kind of sucks for him because he was doing okay. Wasn't doing fantastic, but he was doing okay. There goes that bold prediction that he'd be a quarterback one out the window with his ACL, but no MCL damage, nothing major there. So it looks like Trevor Siemian got some snaps out there, which is weird because they paid Taysom Hill all this money.
He's concussed.
Yeah, it was he was injured.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
Yeah, he got concussed.
He should be back soon.
week
though.
5 or something crazy like that. And he didn't play 6, 7, or 8.
So I thought he was back. That's the thing. That I thought he was back by now.
No, it's a very. I feel like it's his second long-term concussion, but I can't remember for sure.
Well, and the
kids
way
are
that
playing
he
all this
plays
football.
too, it is concerning. But we saw the Taysom Hill experiment last year, and he was personally great for fantasy football. But all of the weapons around him kind of suffered. And in particular, Alvin Kamara. That was when he wasn't really getting thrown the ball at all.
Siemian looked good.
Simeon looked. Yeah, he looked just fine. So
He got Traquan Smith.
all the
involved.
backup quarterbacks looked good this week.
Dude, every single one of them, all of them, every
Cooper
backup
Rush,
quarterback.
Mike White, all these guys.
I feel like Trevor Siemian is one of those guys that can come in and finish a game, though. But when you're asking him to start a full week,
Please save us.
he's going to look
Right.
exposed and not very good. So I don't know that that's the long-term answer there for the rest of the season. I'm guessing it's going to be a mixture, though. I mean, Taysom Hill is probably going to, if he's healthy, take over, don't you guys think?
As of right now, I was listening to NFL Live, and they were talking about this specific situation, and they said, as of right now, Taysom Hill would be the guy. He would be the starter. They like Simeon enough they would feel okay. But if something were to happen to Hill, they said they'd have interest in both Cam Newton and potentially pulling Phillip Rivers out of retirement.
I heard
Which
that too.
He threw his own name in the hat, Phillip Rivers, that is, saying,
Right.
If they were to call,
He said, "My high school season's done."
I might listen.
Yeah, I saw that good meme of all the New Orleans daycare centers are all rubbing their hands together. Yeah, come on, Phil.
He's already
hilarious.
down there, right? I mean, that's where his high school is, I believe.
Yeah,
Pretty
he's
close
somewhere
to
in the
there.
South. I don't know exactly where, but yeah.
Pretty close to where
So many. I mean, every year we talk about these injuries, but it really comes down to what teams are going to be healthy when it comes to the playoffs. I mean, I'm lucky enough in the Scott Fishbowl. I mean, I have some big time hits. Mike Williams, Deebo Samuel. Got lucky with the Josh Allen and Kyler Murray picks there, but again, my team I've not lost anybody to health yet, and I'm still undefeated in that league. So it's like, come on, and I'm looking at the Derrick Henry owners. I mean, immediately when Henry went down, I went to every league and looked at where what teams had Henry and who their backups were, and these are all top of the league teams.
Sure.
None of them had a loud running back depth either. So it's moving on up.
You mentioned Kyler Murray. Was there any update on his injury from this past weekend? He had an ankle.
At the end of it, he should be fine.
I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything specifically on him. No, not at all yet. So we'll see. But we saw how injury did affect him last year. He played through it, but it affected his performance over
Big
the
time.
second half of the season. So yeah, that's a
That was
good
a
question.
shoulder though, not an ankle. So
Well, he
But
moves
he's a
around.
runner.
Yeah, he moves around quite a bit.
he is a runner. Damian Williams, he hurt his knee. He's questionable. T.Y. Hilton's concussed. He's not going to play Thursday night. I believe he's already ruled out. Jalen Reagor's got the ankle sprain. He's week to week, like it matters. And that's it. Those are the injuries for this week.
Did Rager hurt his knee almost scoring that touchdown? Is that the play that he hurt his knee on?
I honestly
Did anyone
don't
see
know.
it? Okay.
That's a good question.
Yeah, he had a goal line type of situation where he was trying to dive, stretch, and he didn't quite make
Yeah,
it.
it could have easily been it.
I think it was that play, but
So obviously, outside of injury, the biggest news this week came.
Third biggest news,
The third big. I said the biggest news outside of injury,
and outside of
murder.
okay, not murder.
Not murder. That's a wrong way to say. I apologize. You're right. That's uncalled for. Tragedy.
There you go.
Calvin Ridley comes out and says, "Hey, I need a break." Because he missed a couple weeks ago for personal reasons. We
It's
had
the
no
London
idea.
game,
Yeah,
yeah.
we had no idea why. And then he missed it. And he did come out. He's like, "Oh, he's missing for personal reasons early." I'm like, "Dude, what is going on with Ridley? Like, something's got to be up.
Right.
Like, is something going on with the family member?" And it comes out he needs help. Like, he has some personal issues going on, some mental things that he needs to deal with. Wishing him nothing but the best to get through this. He is not retired by any means, so don't sell for any dip whatsoever.
No.
Whatsoever. It's just,
If anything, buy if you can.
I have Calvin Ridley, and I've got some atrocious offers.
I'm sure.
From Tyler Gunther.
This is the Tyler show.
It is.
It's weird to put his name in the title, man.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Is that SEO friendly?
He's not gonna want to listen to this one. No. Great guy. Love that dude. I really do genuinely love that dude. But yeah, he sent me these offers for Calvin Ridley. I was like, Tyler, there's no discount here. So if you're gonna make an offer that's respectable, and then he sent me another offer, I'm like, this is not respectable.
He's like, okay, I'll give you 3 seconds.
Dude, it was like Dearness Johnson, some other running back in like a second, and I'm like, what? And he's like, what if I throw in Superflex? What if I throw in Zach Wilson? I was like, that's something, at least. But there's no discount here. So if you have Calvin Ridley, you got to hold. I mean,
Got to.
He might not play again this year, but I mean,
But he might.
he's 24 years old?
I think he's a little bit on the older end. He was an older
25
guy
years
coming
old?
in, so I think he's
Yeah.
26. I can look it
26
up and
even.
see.
Okay.
Yeah, he's 26.
Yeah, so not even in his prime yet. And already has. There's nothing else to do here with Calvin Ridley. It's just Cordarrelle Patterson to the moon now.
It's a hold. There should be no discount, and you're fine. You move on. I mean, that's you laugh at all the offers at this point. Don't get too frustrated like Rich over here, and just laugh them off. Like you're going to hold him. It stinks if you have him on your team.
If you're like, who are some of the players you would like? I'll give you a couple names here. If you have Calvin Ridley, you're a contender, and you need him. Like, would you make like DJ Moore?
Yes, I would take. I already have DJ Moore over Calvin Ridley.
Okay, so you make that
So
move.
yep.
You know me and DJ Moore.
Oh,
We
you're
have
back
this
off again?
We have this.
You were in for a little bit there,
we have
Matt.
this very sordid relationship. I'm not sure I'd do that one.
Debo Samuel.
And we're talking on a contender, right? Is what you
You're a
said.
contender, and like you
Yes,
need
Debo.
I would
you
do
need
Debo
to-
for this year because if you're in a serious contender, Debo is balling out, man. Go
Yeah,
for
he
it.
leads like the league in air yards. Everything, just doing unreal statistics. Yeah, you heard me. What if we go a little bit older? Somebody's over. Would you do Devontae Adams?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, contender. I mean,
I would as
he's
well.
the top
What about
contender.
what about a player that's not performing like he did last year? Is not performing at high levels. Somebody else can get back down on the dip and not be as happy with them. Stephon Diggs
I'm doing Diggs. I love Diggs.
for Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
do it still. Because on a contender, I'm planning to win. So if I can get one that's in the same realm, so I'm talking top 16 or so receiver.
Yeah.
I'm probably
Okay
in
with
with the
it.
exception unless they're
Which
like over the age of
does-
30.
Diggs does not fall into. He's like in the 20s.
Dynasty.
Okay,
top 16.
okay, all right. I thought you were talking about win now type of.
Would you make that move,
scenario.
Matt?
I'm gonna have to look at the points per game.
Josh
He's
Allen's-
back out on
Josh-
Diggs again.
Josh Allen's
Look
your
at this
quarterback.
guy. You're
Josh
so
Allen's your quarterback.
wishy-washy.
No. I do like the player. He's not having a great year though. I'm trying to figure out right now, like if you're better off just waiting it out. And
Ridley could be back in 2 weeks.
exactly.
could.
Ridley could be right back there, scoring 15 to 18 points a
let's
game.
not
Nitty-gritty
pretend
though.
like he's had a great season either.
No, he is not.
Like we're talking like he's played as a top 10
He's
type
going
of guy.
through some stuff, man.
I'm just saying, like,
To be fair, Matt's right.
We're talking about him like he's been this like 20 point per game performer. He's been underwhelming when he's played so far this year.
I think something. I mean, we're talking Calvin Ridley. We're talking Derrick Henry. We're talking.
They're a point difference, by the way. A little bit.
Diggs above?
Yeah, Diggs is above.
So you would be getting a guy that's scoring more and he's for sure playing on a contender. Yes, I'm taking Diggs.
All right.
Yeah, I agree.
See, that was the info that I wanted to see, and yes, now I'm on board.
Okay, good.
I think a big thing here to talk about here in Dynasty Fantasy Football is like when you lose we were in here in like week 8, week 9. This isn't week 3. This isn't week 4. When things like this happen and you're in first place, like you have to pivot, right? Like you have to almost prepare to lose some equity, to lose some value here, because. Remember, this is what we talk about when it comes to championship windows. It doesn't matter how good your team looks on paper. It doesn't matter how how many stud running backs you have or stud receivers. You could have won this league with Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, and J.K. Dobbins. Right. It does not matter.
Stop winning trades. Go out and get good players that you can put into your starting lineup. Don't worry about winning a trade.
These windows are so small to win. It's like the Super Bowls. Like, we play this game to win, and some people just worry about like future equity. Like, 23 first. Oh, I can't give it. Like, that's 2 years away, dude. Like, this is your window. Like, other teams are losing players. Other people are losing Calvin Ridley. They're losing Derrick Henry. Like, the opposite effect, we're like, that team in first had Calvin Ridley and Derrick Henry on it. Man, like this, I thought there was no chance to compete with them. Like they went to this Antonio Gibson. Like he's getting out carried by like there's a window. When these windows open up, you have to jump through them with everything you got. You got to go for that title.
Real quick, on the same line that you were just talking about, what if you had to drop down a potential slight tier in receiver? So what if we were looking at guys like Mike Williams, Michael Pittman Jr., T. Higgins? Would you trade one of those guys, or would you try to acquire one of those guys on a contender for Calvin Ridley?
Absolutely not on T. Higgins. I'll be talking about T. Higgins in the next episode.
Teaser.
Now though,
I would 100%
has been balling.
Yeah,
he has been. We're about to talk about him in just a second here.
Yeah, I would 100%. Now, listen, I would try and be sleazy on this and try and get like a 23 second on top of Calvin Ridley from Michael Pittman.
It's sleazeball over here.
But I think, I honestly, today, I mean, we go right into this like Pittman.
Yeah, we can talk about him now.
I need to move up my ranks even higher. I've already had him high. This is somebody we've been big on the whole time on this podcast. I would do Calvin Ridley right now straight up for Michael Pittman. Because if I'm a contender. But at the same time, I mean, what are we looking at? We're looking at the number one receiver on this team. So we saw Calvin Ridley, what he did with Julio, dominated. We've seen Calvin Ridley without Julio. So again, like Matt said, he's going through some things right now. It's a weird situation. So I'm not going to hold that against Calvin. I'm going to use 8 weeks and hold it against him when he's had literally a spectacular career up to this point. But Michael Pittman's the number one receiver on this team. Mm-hmm. We've seen what he can do at the X position so far, and he's dominating the targets, and more so, he's producing with those targets. He looks like a bona fide number one X receiver.
Yep.
The kind of fantasy football receiver that you get a good solid 5 to 7 years out of high level. Maybe it's wide receiver 5 overall. Maybe it's wide receiver 16 overall at some point. Throughout his career. But to me, he looks like he's a bona fide stud. I would do that.
He reminds me so much of, and I think we even comped him to him when we were doing our film studies and stuff like that. But the more I see him play, he still just reminds me so much of like that Vincent Jackson, just such a big physical presence and just comes down with the ball. Just always seems to come down with the ball. But he's even showing some things after the catch at times too. He's doing a little bit. That's not his forte. That's not his best attribute, but he can get it done there. And in an offense where, T.Y. Hilton's hurt again, Paris Campbell's hurt again, they need that guy, and it's tough to do that when you don't really have a lot else there. The fact that he's been able to produce at this level, especially when the offseason was as messed up as it was with Wentz not being there basically all offseason and, with the injury and that kind of stuff, like to do what he's been doing is just so incredibly impressive.
I mean, I think it does help that he's 6'4" and they can throw it up to him when he's got 3 guys around him, and he seems to be coming down with the ball. You know what I mean? He is really. I don't want to say he's mastering it because I think he still has room to grow, but he's really doing well in that area. And Carson Wentz is trusting him, and that relationship is only going to grow and get better as these guys kind of work together throughout the rest of the season and the rest of their careers. Mm-hmm. So it's headed in the right direction. Everything that we had hoped, I think, to see out of him, I'm definitely seeing. I don't know. I'm guessing you guys are as well.
Yeah, 100%.
The way that we're talking about this. So he's definitely an ascending player. One of these guys that kind of came in a little slow, but now he's really bursting onto the scene.
It goes back to, I've said this multiple times on this podcast, when we did our rookie breakdowns of the 2020 rookie wide receivers, when it was all said and done, I ended the show, ended my receiver breakdowns going, now that I've watched all these rookies, my final conclusion is I was way too low on Michael Pittman Jr. Like, after looking at all these guys as a whole, he belongs in this first round.
Yep.
You know, even in hindsight now, that's a really strong class.
Very
really
strong.
strong class. But he's right up there with those guys. He's up there with those A.J. Browns, the Justin Jefferson guy. You know what I mean? He's up there with that mold of kind of receiver because he's the kind of guy that's going to get you 15 points per game. Right. You know, he's going to get you there with those big touchdown games and get you a little bit more. So going back to Calvin Ridley, if I had to flip him for that, I feel comfortable with that because I'm getting a young receiver. I mean, what is he, 23 years old?
Yeah, maybe 24, but
Maybe 24?
he's not old.
Number one receiver in the team. Not a lot of competition when it comes to other receivers.
24.
Okay.
Anybody else they bring in, they would never bring in a player like him to compete with him as well. So he's going to be the red zone threat.
Yeah,
He's
more
gonna
of
be
a
that jump
slot
ball
guy
threat.
or a speed guy or something
guy.
like that.
And you said Vincent Jackson earlier, and I think that is he has shades of that as well. But you can see there's little bits of like Mike Evans almost in him as well. I mean,
absolutely.
another big guy who's just dominant with his size alone, and that's 6'4", 220 pounds. He's every bit of that and more. I mean, he's a very good player.
And the nice part too is you have some of these receivers where, you know, we talked about some stuff that was obviously concerning what happened with Henry Ruggs, but there's a lot of these receivers that are divas, that are me guys, that are, you know, off the field concerns or maybe locker room concerns or different things like that. Michael Pittman is like the cream of the crop, like great kid, smart.
Nick Chubb.
Yeah, exactly. Very similar mold as Nick Chubb. You know,
son of a former NFL player, so he's been here. He knows
how it works. Yep. Like there's so many positive things going in his direction that, and it doesn't hurt that he's in the division that he is. He gets to play Tennessee, who's not a strong defensive team. And he gets to play Houston and Jacksonville twice a year, each of those teams. So that's 6 of his games every year is against a Tennessee team that does not have a very good defense at this point, and 2 of the worst in the league. Like that's great for his future.
Yeah, these guys always come around every single year in Dynasty that we say the same thing every year. I say the same thing. It's like, well, it looks like an overpay today will be underpay tomorrow. That's Michael Pittman Jr. right now. If you're out of it for any reason whatsoever, and you have a high caliber older wide receiver, 28, 29, a Devontae Adams on your roster, DeAndre Hopkins on your roster, and you're looking to make a lateral move for long-term benefits. Again, these are moves you got to make in Dynasty. You got to be smart with them. And sometimes, you know, people are so quick to trade for draft picks, but we like to focus on are these younger guys that offer where the arrows just keep, like, we see that arrow still going up, and then the plateau is a top 16 plateau for a couple of years. And that's Michael Pittman Jr. to me. This is to go out and get today kind of player, because pretty soon he's going to be in that tier where he's going to be much more expensive to get. It's not going to be as easy to do. If you have Devontae Adams right now, a contender, a DeAndre Hopkins, somebody might still not make that trade with you because he's doing so well. You might not be able to make that move. But sometimes on names alone, you can get that done. You can offer Devontae Adams and maybe try and get a 23 second or get a 22 second on top of that for Michael Pittman. But at the same time, guys, like I'm okay if I'm out of it with one of those old guys. Again, 28, 29, that's not like end all be all there. You still got a couple of years. But I would just if I'm in a kind of a rebuild kind of mode, like I would just rather reset and get Michael Pittman Jr.
And hopefully this was one of the guys that we pushed the hardest in the offseason. I know after week 2 or 3 of the season, he was the guy that I said, like, this is my buy for our buy sell episode. Like he was one that we pushed over and over and over. So hopefully you bought while he was still pretty inexpensive, when people were like, I don't know, they're getting Carson Wentz as their quarterback, and he didn't start off super strong as a rookie. He only had a K year. I mean, you could have gotten him straight up for a late first probably this year with a right around draft time, with the hype around Elijah Moore and, you know, all Rashad Bateman and all these guys. You probably could have got close to that straight up for Michael Pittman Jr. So hopefully you went and got him now, because his price tag has doubled easily at this point.
Yeah, and signs were there. Like when we were talking about the offseason early in the year, we mentioned, hey, look what he did in the playoffs at the end of the year, closed it out. Same, exactly what he's doing now, heavily targeted. Probably arguably when it comes to young receivers for price tags, because you're always looking for price tags. Yeah, Michael Pittman Jr. is not cheap, but the price tag is still cheap for what he's going to be worth 12 months from now in my eyes. So I am definitely, as you guys then too are as well, advocating, go out there and buy. What might look like an overpay today will be underpaid tomorrow. If you're in the middle of the road, you're looking to readjust, this is the perfect guy to go get. Somebody needs running back help, go get Michael Pittman Jr. You got older receivers, go get Michael Pittman Jr. You got an older receiver that's not as high caliber as Devontae Adams, give up that receiver and give up your first round pick. Like he's that good. That's how I feel about him. Like I think he's in that second tier right now of wide receivers with the potential to get even higher. So love him.
All right, now we get to talk about PredictionStrike.com. Some stocks on some certain players definitely took a little bit of a nosedive this week.
Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry is obviously one of those players.
Henry Ruggs.
They might have removed his name. I don't know. Like it's not looking good there. So, but there's still opportunity to get in on some of these maybe lower tier guys that maybe haven't risen up the board yet. It'd be tough to buy Michael Pittman Jr. at this point with how well he's playing. Hopefully you invested in him in the offseason.
Beginning of the season, yeah, that would have been the time.
I forgot to sell my Sam Darnold shares.
Oh no. That didn't pan out. That didn't pan out too well.
Ouch. That dude took a good lick this weekend. Did you see
Yeah,
that?
he did. He got concussed.
Licking dudes.
But I don't know how you recovered. But if you go to PredictionStrike.com, that's exactly what you get to do. Not lick dudes, but you do get to buy, sell, and hold shares of players just like you would the stock market. If you go there and you use promo code Dynasty, you can receive a free share, maybe a Michael Pittman Jr., with your first deposit of $20 or more. That's promo code Dynasty at PredictionStrike.com to receive your free share with your first deposit of $20 or more.
They revamped their website too.
They've been pumping out ads and stuff. I'm seeing them all over the place lately.
I haven't seen them way more now. They're like kind of
it's completely revamped. Looks great. They did a great job.
Use that promo code NERD so you get all that free stuff.
That's right. Yeah. No, use promo code Dynasty.
Dynasty, like Rich said.
God,
Rich. Yeah, dude, stop putting words in my mouth. All right, so now we're going to close out the show with a little treat here. We're going to be talking, we try to do mid-season every single year, the 2022 rookie class. How's it looking right now? Now, I always say I don't start watching these rookies until after the season. I'm too... more than knee deep. I'm literally ear deep in regular football. I can't put the time in that you nerds put in college and NFL.
Regular football. College doesn't count. It's not
regular.
regular.
College
Pretend
doesn't count.
football.
It doesn't count until they really come to the NFL. That's the only time I'll give them the time of day, unless they play for Ohio State.
Well, we got a couple Ohio State guys to talk about.
Yeah. So obviously we're our lead we have the nerd score at nicenerds.com. Garrett, you want to explain to the peeps what the nerd score is?
Yeah, the nerd score is basically we take a few different rankers that are going to spend a stupid amount of time watching film. And when we say stupid amount of time, we're talking at very, very, very minimum, like 4 or 5 games. But most of these guys, we're talking 7, 8, 9 games that we're watching every single play, breaking it down. And then we go in and we rank all of these different attributes on a scale of 1 to 10. And we even use half-point increments. So it could be like an 8.5 or different things like that. And then it comes up with basically what is a tape score, or we call it our nerd score. And then we average all of those guys together and we get our final nerd score. So I have my individual ones, Jared has his individual ones, and sometimes we'll share our individual scores.
Each attribute has its own weight to it too.
Which one of you guys is the Russian judge giving 6s?
Well, don't trust Garrett with his jump ball. Ability.
It was contested catch. It wasn't.
That's why we have more than one person doing it.
So remember, before Justin Jefferson even came into the NFL, this guy
I gave him an 8, which is really high.
Was ranking down on Justin Jefferson's contested catch, and we were like, dude, Justin Jefferson.
Do you realize the player now that I had higher than him? Because there was only like 3 or 4, and one of them was Michael Pittman Jr.
Man, were we right on Justin Jefferson?
Yeah.
Woo! Contested
We were so wrong on
Russian judge Garrett Price.
Hey, dude,
I think it's go.
A lot of people try to trade. People called the Jets about Denzel Mims today, and they told him hard no.
Which is so weird.
So weird.
Then use him.
Yeah, take the shackles off his ankles, you prisoners.
Jets are a dumpster fire.
Prisoners.
Not you prisoners. You who keeps people in
Jail
prison?
Guards.
Jailers.
I think it's important to note, Garrett. We do the nerd score prior to the NFL draft so that there's no draft capital bias in our scores.
Exactly, because we want to say like just solely based on the tape and the tape alone, this is where we have. So these aren't necessarily our rankings because we might rank things slightly different based on the draft, based on injury history, based on, certain narratives about players, off the field stuff or whatever. So it's not necessarily our final rankings, but what we've come to find over the past few years is most of the time it would have been just as good, if not better, just to stick with the tape grades only.
Yeah.
We had a few misses, and that's going to happen.
Yeah.
You're not going to hit, about 1,000.
Austin Watkins.
Yeah, I still love Austin Watkins.
I know.
Darn broken
it's
foot.
A shame. I think he got picked up.
Did he?
Yeah.
Hopefully that
walking the streets.
He's on a practice squad.
But so yeah, we're not going to get everything perfect, obviously, but it is a good tool to say, okay, before the draft, before so and so went to Cincinnati and so went to Miami and so, this is what we thought of these players. So that's kind of how that happens. But even before we get to that point, we're already looking at Devy guys. We're going through all of these different names. And so we wanted to kind of give you guys just a 40,000 foot view, 10,000 foot view, whatever it is, the very high view of what this class looks like, some of the names to keep in mind, how it compares to past classes, future classes. We're not going to spend a ton of time, but at the trade deadline, I even had somebody message me this week about this, asking, I don't really know what to do at the deadline. I don't know exactly how to compare some of these classes. This will hopefully give you a good idea of how to do that.
Yeah, a little preview of the 2022 class. And remember, the Nerd Score is available at dynastynerds.com for Nerds. Remember, it's a little perk. This will be the year 3 of us doing the Nerd Score as well. So we're starting to get a little bit of a back log of proof of why it works.
Yeah.
And so far, what we've seen after 2 years is it's working.
Absolutely.
This is strictly tape, and we will be adding an analytics-based score here soon too. So we'll have best of both worlds.
Yep.
And where we do watch the tape is in the Nerd Herd Prospect Film Room, which is available to Nerd Herd subscribers too.
Yeah, we have all the film on the rookies. Everything for every game is broken down. You can watch the entire player's game in 5 minutes on dynastynerds.com. So you can watch all these rookies, every single game they do, and break these down for yourself.
And that thing's just growing weekly. I mean,
it is so much film.
Yep.
So much film. So obviously to lead the way here is going to be our producer, Jared Wackerly, who's one of our lead Devy guys, and Garrett Price. So I'll let you guys kind of take it from here, and then Matt and I will just chime in if we need to, because you guys got all the answers and I just have questions.
Rich and I are just going to thumb wrestle over here. And you got a big thumb, dude.
Jared, I know you and I were even talking yesterday specifically about this quarterback class, but give me your overview right now of what you think about the 22 class. We have a list here, and this is just preliminary of, we ended up with the top 6. We couldn't agree on a top 5, but 6 guys that are probably the most interesting: Sam Howell, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Desmond Ridder, Carson Strong, Kenny Pickett. Don't hold us to that order. That's going to change 16 times as we dig into the tape a little bit more. But Jared, thoughts overall on the quarterback class and maybe some specific players?
So this year, coming into the season, a lot of people had Spencer Rattler as QB1 for Oklahoma.
Not me.
But he has lost his starting quarterback job at Oklahoma. So it's assumed that he's probably going to be transferring. So we kind of just take him out of this class completely. But this year we don't really have a guy or guys that are like the guy you've been waiting for that's going to come out and be that quarterback. So mock drafts are all over the place with who's going to be the first quarterback taken, where they're going to be taken. And it's kind of a wash. So right now, I think Malik Willis from Liberty is probably going to be the first quarterback off the board. He offers that running back at the quarterback position that we all covet in fantasy football, and he's got a live arm. He's probably got the best arm in the class, personally.
Arm strength.
And he's accurate. He's a good quarterback.
He is. He's turned the ball over a surprising amount, though, compared to his level of competition.
Yeah, last 3 weeks, I think he has 7 turnover-worthy plays, according to PFF. But he's just going to give you that rushing floor that you love, and I think those tools are super hard to find. So I think he's going to be an early first-round pick. So we love first-round picks.
We do.
Yeah.
Would you say from for this class, from a Superflex standpoint, is this the weakest quarterback class we've seen in some time?
It's definitely the weakest at the top. Absolutely, for sure, because we've had Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields and Zach Wilson last year, and Trey Lance, like all those guys. We had Joe Burrow and Tua and Herbert. We had even Kyler Murray. We were pretty high on. We liked Haskins, but obviously that didn't pan out as well. But and not all these guys are going to pan out typically, but we've had several very strong classes in a row, and even before that, then there was the Baker and Josh Allen and all these. So we've had so many good classes where if there wasn't a clear-cut one, there were 2 or 3 guys that were worthy of going towards the top. Here, I would argue at this point, based on what I've seen, and I'm not a quarterback guru, but there's nobody that I would feel good. If I'm an NFL team, there's nobody I feel good about taking in the top 10, let alone number 1 overall. So, Jared, this is always how you look at it, and this is very much so how I'll look at it, especially this season. Whatever the draft ends up saying is probably where I'm going to be ranking for the most part. If Sam Howell's the top quarterback off the board, or Matt Corral, or whoever it ends up being, Malik Willis, that's probably going to be one of, if not my top guy, because right now you could tell me any one of these guys goes, one goes 15th and one goes 20th and, whatever, and I'd believe you. And you could tell me that the same guy could be in the 3rd round, and I would believe you.
There's so much that goes into evaluating the quarterback position. I don't like to spend too much time from a guy that's evaluating from my computer desk at home. I'll look at these guys and wait to see what the draft capital says, but we're not in meeting rooms with them. We don't get to pick their brain. We don't understand exactly what they're asked of in their current offense that they're in. So it's so hard for us to say who's going to be a stud in the NFL. It's so hard to predict how things are going to play out. What coaching staff do they go to? Do they go to an Adam Gase situation? All that kind of stuff. So I just want to know who's going to be a 1st-round pick, see who the 1st-round picks are, because obviously they're going to get the opportunity earlier than the others, and make my decision at that point. And I think Malik Willis is going to be a 1st-round pick, and he's going to give us that rushing floor that we want. And I could see Philly, they're probably going to have 3 top 15 picks this year. So I could see them replacing Hurts with one of these guys, and I think Malik Willis offers a bigger arm. He's better on the ground. He's way more elusive. He's faster, I think. So I could see him going there. Matt Corral is a Heisman favorite. I think Kenny Pickett's a late riser this year from Pitt.
And he's a guy that you've been high on for a while.
Yeah, I've been talking about him for 2 years now. He's had a Joe Burrow ascension this year.
I was actually just looking at his numbers because I knew that you were going to come to him because I remember you talking about him a bit, and he's already doubled his output from the touchdowns, and he's had a big jump in his completion percentage from 61 to 69. So he does look like a guy that's real, and his interceptions have dropped. He had 9 last year. He only has 3 throughout the year. So he is a guy that looks like he has taken a nice step here in his senior year, and who knows where that could end up when the whole process starts and all that. Does he go to the Senior Bowl if he's at the Senior Bowl? Does he ball out there?
He's a Senior Bowl guy for sure.
Yeah, so he does feel like a Senior Bowl guy coming on kind of late.
So he's like what people are calling super seniors now. He's a 5th-year senior. So he decided to stay in school last year. I think he had a day 3 grade that's reported that was given to him. So he decided to come back, and he's definitely improved his draft stock. He's killing it at Pitt this year.
Let's move on, because as much fun as it is to talk about quarterbacks,
didn't get to talk about Carson Strong or argue about Ritter.
I do love Ritter. He reminds me, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, it's a recent former 1st-round quarterback, but people don't love the kid. He reminds me a lot of Jordan Love. Okay. He's a really good athlete, pretty strong arm, but definitely struggles with accuracy.
I like the Kaepernick. I like to comp him to Kaepernick a little bit.
Similar type of player.
Similar, not as accurate, not as consistent throwing the ball, but really good athlete, like you said.
Yeah, and he's been winning a lot of big games. They're undefeated. They went toe-to-toe with Georgia last year in the bowl game. They beat Notre Dame. So he's done a lot of impressive things so far, but there's definitely some legitimate accuracy concerns in his game.
Where are we at on time? Are we
55 minutes.
Okay. All right.
We got a little bit of time still.
Yeah, I mean, we could always spill some of this over into the Nerd Herd episode as well if we're going a bit too long.
Let's touch on the running backs here real quick, because it's, this is the funny part about this class is usually at least at 1 or 2 positions, it's clear who the top guy is. At all of these positions, it's still very up in the air. I think wide receiver is the closest to consensus.
But would you say wide receiver is clearly the strength of this class?
I would say so, yes.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. That's what all the mild things I've been looking at on the outside. Everything says like all the top grades are all on the receivers.
Exactly.
I think this is going to be a year where like super flex tight end premium leagues where you would typically get that like bump into the second round of some of these running backs and receivers. I think there's not going to be as much of one this year because the quarterback class and tight end classes are kind of down as far as like top heavy goes.
Yep.
So you're definitely going to want an earlier pick if you're trying to get one of these really good receivers.
So the 5 names that we have down that are the most interesting right now, Isaiah Spiller, Kenneth Walker, who another guy that you were really high on, Jared, and he's had an unbelievable season for Michigan State. He might even be the favorite for the Heisman at this point, despite being a running back. Breece Hall out of Iowa State, Zamir White out of Georgia, and then Zach Charbonnet, who was a Michigan player, transferred to UCLA and has played infinitely better out on the West Coast there. So any thoughts on these 5 players?
I'll give you my ranks of them real quick.
Yeah.
We don't have to go into too much detail on these guys. Right now, dude, I got Charbonnet as RB1.
Okay.
Right now. Then I got Spiller, Kenneth Walker, then Breece Hall, and then if I have to rank Zamir White 5th here, I will.
Who's running back
I
out of
like Zamir
Cincinnati? He's looking
Jerome Ford.
Yeah, Jerome Ford. And he'd be right on the fringe here. He might even be 5 for me.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so do you think these 5 or these 6 we throw in Ford here, do you think in the right situation these guys offer fantasy football upside? Where would you put this running back class? Like, if I had to say on a scale of 1 through 10, right? Obviously 10 being the best class of all time, 1 being the worst class of all time. Where would you 2 rank this running back class? Go enter in week 9 of the NFL season.
3.
3?
That's bad.
Yeah, I would say probably like 5.
So you think it's an average class?
Yeah. I think all 5 of these guys could carry an NFL workload.
I don't think any one of these guys are first-round players.
Neither do I.
Right?
No.
Okay,
We don't
so
have
we
a
agree on
first-round
that.
running back.
It's even harder to do in today's NFL anyway.
For sure, but
Right.
we had 2 this past year. I mean, we had ETN and Najee.
Yeah, but Najee was a home run anyways.
Sure.
So
And Javonte was right on the fringe there. He was, the 4th or 5th guy in. So
in this day and age, you're looking at, can he be a 2nd-round pick? Can he be a 3rd-round pick? Like, that's where the juice is.
I think we got a lot of 3rd-round picks right here.
I think this is a mostly 3rd-round picks. And that's the thing, like, we didn't necessarily consider last year a strong running back class. I would easily have all 3 of those top guys ahead of these guys. Like, and it's not that close.
Okay, here's the guy. Where would Michael Carter fit into here? Because I like Michael Carter coming out.
Knowing what we know now or as a prospect?
I think we got to do it as a prospect.
As a prospect. Because I like Michael Carter's film. I thought he was pretty solid. I liked him a lot.
I think I had him at 6.
Okay.
I had Kenneth Gainwell was my 4th.
Okay.
I would like 4 of these guys more than Michael Carter as a prospect.
I think it would be
It's a good spot. And there's some good opportunity this year to go out there and get on some teams. Miami's going to be looking for a running back. Houston's going to be looking for a running back. There's going to be teams out there this year looking for an opportunity to get one of these guys. So one of these guys has potential to be being this year's 1-1 an opportunity when they end up in Miami, they end up in Houston.
I know Jared's not quite as high on Zamir White as I am. Zamir White was the top running back in his class when he came out, but he had some knee injuries.
2 ACL surgeries.
Yep. So back
Both knees.
coming in, and so those first 2 years were all jacked up. But he's gotten progressively better and more explosive. But he has that prototypical size that you want to see. He's a Georgia running back. He's been coached up well. He actually reminds me, if you take away the top end speed, there are shades of Nick Chubb style playing where he's just a physical downhill. He's going to make smart decisions kind of player, but I don't think he's got the explosiveness that a Nick Chubb type has.
Remember that's what we were worried about Nick Chubb too. Like when he was coming
his
out because of
knee,
his ACL injury, and he was a year removed. Like, dude, I just don't know if he has the explosiveness to get to the outside edge there. I remember specifically talking about Nick Chubb, like going, man, he's a really fine running back. Loved him before the injury, but like, can he get? Like, does he have the speed to get outside edge? And now look at him, literally one of the most elite running backs in the NFL today. So you got to be careful. You know, Frank Gore, 2 ACL injuries before he came into pros, healthy for literally since the dinosaurs were roaming the earth. It's still out there today. Look what he did for the Chiefs.
Yeah, but I think best case scenario, we're looking at a mid-second for any of these guys.
Yeah.
That's good though. That's
There's
really
no-
good though.
Like we said, there's no generational type guy, but I think there's a bunch of 2 to 3 year window guys that we like to talk about.
I did like Zamir White when we looked into him last year, because wasn't there a point when he was
We thought he might come out, especially with it being a weaker running back class depth wise. Right. But I will say there might be a hair more depth in this class than there was in last year's class.
Yeah, I think there's some guys we're leaving off, like
Right.
Kyron Williams, Jerome Ford.
Yep.
They're all solid players.
So I do think there's more potential depth where we'll see more second, third, fourth round picks overall.
And remember,
than we did
it's
this
about
past year.
opportunity. I mean, look at this. How many teams could draft a running back in the second and third round next year? Buffalo,
Easily, yep.
New England, Miami, not Tennessee, not Jacksonville, Houston.
Tennessee might be looking for somebody. I mean, at this point,
I know, but he still wouldn't be like to the point where he's high draftable. Houston is 4.
Atlanta, probably.
Atlanta.
I'm not that far yet.
Sorry.
Philly potentially would be 5. They're potentially looking at somebody.
Trying to beat you.
Chicago, maybe Detroit, no. Tampa Bay could be 6. Not Carolina. Atlanta, 7. Arizona, 8. And the Rams, 9. Potentially with Akers. We'll see how it comes together. And that, maybe Seattle. So
they don't have a draft pick.
Oh, definitely Seattle,
like
because
8 years from now. But
Carson,
Yeah, you're
the
right.
Rams.
with Carson's injuries and
DJ
stuff in his
Dallas.
neck
Yeah.
and how things have gone.
So that's 9 potential spots to get your juices flowing on these running backs. Just to give you a little heads up when it comes to this 22. Because, I mean, the thing out there right now is like, 23, 23, 23, 23. But, like, some of these running backs who, like you said, it's about a 5. You gave it a 3.
I just don't think it's an average class. I think it's a below average class.
I know, but I mean, it's just about opportunity. So that could skyrocket a little bit. We're running out of time here, so let's hit on some of these receivers real quick, and we'll be real thin on the tight ends.
Tight end is not an exciting class overall. Watermeyer and Billingsley have the most upside.
Trey McBride, I guess, is an honorable mention we didn't have on here.
Jimmy Ruckert's looked good at his time at Ohio State, and I use a lot, but he's looked good.
We'll say Grant Calcaterra. He was considered like the tight end 1 of this class for
while
a
he's
long
at OU.
time. Had a lot of concussion issues. Left OU, took a year off. Now he's back at SMU, and he's looked good.
He's played well. But yeah, the wide receiver position, if this is probably the closest position to having a consensus, I think probably 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 would tell you Treylon Burks is probably the top prospect
He's looked
in this
great.
class.
Dude, there's there's a few dogs that I want to have.
Yep.
Burks looks really good. Garrett Wilson looks really good.
Yeah.
Olave looks really good.
So Drake London is my wide receiver 2 from USC, and he actually just fractured his ankle, so he's out for the rest of the year this past weekend.
So that'll be interesting to see. You know, it's always tough when guys have those injuries like that. Do they end up coming out? Do they end up going back to school? That's going to be a tough one to see. Another guy that should probably be on this list, but he's missing the entire season due to an ACL injury, George Pickens. There was arguments as far as like physicality and, you know, the ability to make plays. He could have been the top wide receiver in this class.
Like an AJ Green type guy.
Exactly. And maybe even more physical than AJ Green. And, you know, he could have been up there as well. Ross from Clemson.
Justin Ross.
You know, great rookie year, really solid sophomore campaign. Then all of that stuff came out with his
This
health.
receiver class is, as the college football season has gone on, it's definitely just keeps improving.
Yes. So the hard part for a lot of us dynasty players is if for most teams, that's probably our strength because we've had so many good rookie wide receiver classes in a row that it's like, I'm excited about the opportunity to get more good young receivers, but chances are that's probably not what your team needs.
That's where the value is.
Throw me a freaking bone here with a running back, please.
Yes. So that's the tricky part, but absolutely lots of, I mean, even David Bell, not the most athletic player, but just a really, really solid receiver, was a great compliment to Rondale Moore because just you're more like a Keenan Allen type of guy, possession, move the chains.
He's produced since his true freshman year. Really good route runner, 6'2",
Really good route
205, can be like an alpha.
Assuming George Pickens comes out, Jared, give me your top 5 receivers in order.
Okay, so I got Treylon Burks as wide receiver 1. I have... So Treylon Burks, 6'3", 225, super fast, probably going to run a 4.3.
Yeah.
And insane ball skills. But the weird thing with him is he runs like 90% of his routes from the slot.
Yeah.
And I think that's more of a product of Arkansas not having good quarterbacks. I think he's had 4 or 5 different quarterbacks, and they're just trying to find ways to get him the ball. They line up as running back.
He makes big time plays.
He's like a bigger Laviska Shenault. Yeah, big time plays.
He looks...
His
like
hands are humongous. I mean, he's one of those... He's just a freak.
Yeah.
So he's a guy that's going to get picked early, and you want to have... and just take that shot on a guy like that.
You think right now the clear consensus 1-1 for the 2022 rookie class?
It's tough to say right now. But
if I had to pick
right
that's
now,
who I would
yes,
take.
Yes.
Treylon Burks. Okay.
And Drake London would be on wide receiver 2. He's 6'5", 210.
Former basketball player.
played on USC's basketball team for 2 years. Kind of like a Mike Evans type guy. Ray Garvin comps him to Brandon Marshall. He's probably going to win the Biletnikoff this year if he didn't get hurt. He's a beast. So those are guys that are like just guys you don't come around very often. And then I would have Garrett Wilson from Ohio State, David Bell, and then probably Chris Olave right now.
That's a solid top five.
Yeah.
That's a solid top five.
Just flip
so Pickens is out of your top five.
Yeah, for right now, he is. He was really raw still. He was still raw.
Flip London and Wilson at 2 and 3, and it'd basically be the same. But I would, if he comes out, I would consider Pickens at my 5th. But it's just so tough to. You didn't see anything from him this year. You don't know how he recovered from the injury. But if you're talking about a ceiling player, I mean that is a ceiling player.
Yeah, Wilson's got really elite ball skills, really good body control,
great body control.
Yep. I mean He's a playmaker next level. Chris Olave, again, I can speak on Ohio State guys. I've been watching their whole career.
Yeah,
really solid route runner,
slot receiver,
really good hands. One of those like real solid guys that's kind of come in here, kind of like what Cooper Kupp gives you, right? You know, like come in here and just give you. You can see 10 targets, catch 8 footballs for 98 yards and a touchdown on a week-in, week-out basis in the right system. So the reason we do this is when you're trading for picks, when you're making moves, like what's there ahead of me. Sounds like the 22 class offers some potential here. You know, obviously, if you're in Superflex, the value might be at receiver and running back this year. But hey, as long as you're giving me talented players, it all works out in the end. You mentioned there's been a good influx at wide receivers. We've seen it now. Teams need receivers.
Yep.
Even right now, there's never too much.
Tennessee's not upset about it being a deep receiver class.
Not at all. So. That's it. That's this week's show. Hopefully all the information helped you and helps your Dynasty teams. We'll be back next week talking about week 9, and hopefully your favorite player and your stud is still healthy and still playing for the rest of the year. And if not, we'll talk about it. See you next week, Nerd Herd.
Adios.